The game of baseball, known as America's pastime, is an age-old game that dates back to the late 18th century in the United States. In fact, and according to Baseball Reference, baseball was so popular in the early days of the United States that it was banned within an 80-yard radius of town meeting houses so that business could be uninterruptedly attended to. Since the uprising creation of baseball in the United States, its popularity has exponentially risen. According to Kurt Bradenhosen, Michael Azzani, and Christina Satimi of Forbes magazine, the average net worth of a Major League Baseball team is at $811 million, and the average annual net revenue of Major League Baseball as a whole is at $8 billion. These statistics suggest that Major League Baseball has become one of the most prominent and popular professional sports organizations in the world. However, the once offensively dominated and interesting sport of baseball has become defensively dominated and somewhat boring. To ensure the beauty and interesting nature of baseball is preserved, home plate should be reduced 1.5 inches on each batter's box side. This would limit the pitcher's advantage, reduce umpire mistakes, and create more offensive production. The first way shrinking home plate would benefit the game of baseball would be by reducing the advantage pitchers have on batters. According to Baseball Almanac, the number of strikeouts in the past 50 years has risen by 25,000. According to Travis Sawchik, pitchers today throw harder than they ever have before. This means that the skills of pitchers today have exponentially risen since baseball's creation. Pitchers already have 4 balls to play with, while batters only have 3 strikes to work with. So, combined with the increased pitcher skills today, batters are at a very big disadvantage to pitchers. Thus, reducing the size of home plate and reducing the strike zone would give batters somewhat of an advantage to the pitchers. The second way shrinking home plate would benefit the game of baseball would be by correcting the already larger strike zone that is in place because of umpire mistakes. According to Darren William, umpires call, on average, 1 strike that is not actually a strike per every 2 at-bats. This means that umpires are penalizing batters for balls they cannot reach with their bat. Reducing the plate and reducing the strike zone would mean that umpires would less often call strikes that were unreachable by batters. A third way shrinking the plate would lead to more interesting baseball games would be by increasing offensive production. According to Frank DeFord, players asked about shrinking home plate agreed that they would more aggressively swing at balls. Zachary Reimer claims that batters could reach more balls on the edges of the strike zone if home plate was reduced. This means that if home plate was reduced, more balls in play, hits, and home runs would be seen in baseball. In fact, most experts such as Frank DeFord claim that the size of home plate should be reduced to some extent, so that pitchers no longer have an advantage over batters. Personally, I think that shrinking home plate would fix a lot of flaws in baseball. To get a rule like the size of home plate change, baseball advocates should argue rule changes not only at the professional level, but at every age level in the game of baseball. Although a major rule like shrinking home plate would be hard to change in a very sacrilegious game as in baseball, continued and widespread support would ensure that this rule would change for the better. Just think of how much more interesting a baseball game would be if the home plate was smaller. Even though it's been set in stone for a long time, it's time for a change. Because the size of home plate is marring the image of baseball and making it deemed a boring sport. Today in baseball, pitchers have a greater advantage over batters, umpires make mistakes, and offensive production is far too low. Furthermore, defense is becoming much too easy and offense is becoming way too hard because of an enlarged strike zone that exists because of an oversized home plate. A reduction in the size of home plate 1.5 inches on each batter's box side would restore the original interesting nature of baseball. Just think of how much more fun a baseball game would be to watch or play if the pitcher actually threw hittable balls to the batter.